You're listening to Copper and Heat. This is Katie. A quick note before we get to today's episode. Like probably all of you, my last week has been completely consumed with coronavirus and what it means for the restaurant industry. I've actually been in the middle of helping open a restaurant, so this is possibly the worst time to do that ever. And y'all, this really fucking sucks. I don't think I need to tell you this. I'm sure you're already feeling it too. We'd actually been working on this story for months now, but at the time that I'm recording this, we've heard that Illinois, Ohio, and New York are all mandating that restaurants close. 6 counties in the Bay Area, where Ricardo and I live, have ordered people to shelter in place and stay home. Restaurants and bars are closed unless they do takeout or delivery. So many restaurants across the country are doing this preventatively and making changes to staffing, trying to stay afloat in this really challenging and uncertain time. I've been talking with a bunch of my friends about how it's affecting them and trying to find different resources to share. If you have any, shoot me a note. I'm trying to share as many resources as possible. In a weird instance of coincidence, we've been researching stories about healthcare in the restaurant industry for a few months and had this episode scheduled for a while before coronavirus made its way to the U.S. The research we did earlier in the year on healthcare in the industry led us to this organization called Giving Kitchen. In the time of coronavirus, emergency relief funds for restaurant and service industry folks are popping up everywhere. But the fact that service industry people don't have a large financial safety net for crises like illness or injury is unfortunately not anything new. It's extremely exacerbated right now and at unprecedented levels, but the issues have always been there. And Giving Kitchen has been working in Georgia to mitigate those issues for years. The coronavirus crisis is really shedding light on underlying problems in the system that have been there under the surface. And I know how difficult and scary it is right now. But we'll get through this together. I'm making a list of resources on our website at copperandheat.com/coronavirus. Let me know if you have any others to add. On another note, if you have anything you're doing to take care of your mental health in a time like this that you'd like to share, that would be great too. I'm sure a lot of us are having some of the same feelings. With all that said, here's the story of Giving Kitchen.
These are jobs that anyone from doesn't matter your criminal background, your education level, if you can show up and work hard, there's a place for you in food service. What's the downside of this, right? If you're sick or you're hurt, there's not a place for you.
This is Copper and Heat, the podcast exploring the unspoken rules and traditions of restaurant kitchens. I'm Katie Osuna. In 2012, Ryan Heininger, a well-known chef in Atlanta, Georgia, was diagnosed with late-stage gallbladder cancer. Even with insurance, there were copays, travel to cancer treatment centers, and a ton of expenses that wouldn't be covered. So in January of 2013, over 800 people in the Atlanta food service industry came together and raised over $275,000 for the Heiningers, and they called the fundraiser Team Heidi. After 2 years of fighting, Ryan passed away from the cancer. But out of this fight came the idea for Giving Kitchen, an organization that helps food service workers through financial crisis. Every January, they hold their Team Heidi fundraiser and raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for food service workers who are struggling through a financial crisis.
At the end of the day, that's what is so attractive about working in restaurants. The idea of serving people, I think, is really attractive, and why so many restaurant people gravitate towards Giving Kitchen, because it's about the idea of service.
This is Brian.
My name is Brian Schroeder, and I'm the executive director of Giving Kitchen.
Like so many people who support Giving Kitchen every year, Brian was drawn to the giving aspect, but he also has a particular perspective on the kitchen side too.
When I was 3 days old, my mom and dad opened a restaurant. We were a family of modest means. This was not my dad's second career. It's not like he got fed up as a banker and decided he wanted to go get into food service. This was our one shot. But for me, it was a front row seat to what life is like in food service, both from, the ownership perspective to being, close friends and almost family with people my whole life who work in food service and seeing the struggles they go through. And when I went to college, I was like, no way, I'm out. I had no intentions of ever going back. I thought I was done with food service, and I have a degree in philosophy and religion. I have a master's degree in nonprofit management. Before Giving Kitchen, I spent 10 years working for a conservation organization. When I heard of Giving Kitchen, it just seemed like the perfect opportunity to kind of return home. In a lot of ways, what Giving Kitchen does is what a lot of great restaurants do already, is they take care of their own, they pass the hat.
Though it started as a community coming together to help one chef and his family, Giving Kitchen has now helped over 4,000 food service workers since 2013. The restaurant industry has notoriously bad benefits for workers that are sick or injured. Only 25% of restaurant workers have paid sick leave, 31% have health insurance through work, and less than a quarter of restaurants provide workers' comp insurance. In an industry that is really hard on the body and the mind, Giving Kitchen is working to mitigate some of these issues. The first program developed by Giving Kitchen was their financial assistance program. They provide grants to people who are experiencing one of 4 different types of crisis.
An illness, an injury, a death in the family, or a housing crisis because of a flood or fire.
At the very beginning, they were helping a lot of people in times of financial crisis. But as they grew, they realized that their demographics were pretty homogenous.
Giving Kitchen was founded, it really was a group of people, a family, so to speak, that came together for Ryan Heidinger, who was a chef who was living in Grand Park but working in Smyrna. Ryan was white. His friends and family were white. The people who they asked to help were white. And as Giving Kitchen kind of rolled into existence, that's who their network was, who was able to tell the story. It's who the story appealed to.
So that was something that they had to change.
It's been very difficult, and we've had to really kind of work through some unperceived biases about how to help food service workers.
Because food service workers are a pretty diverse group. About 13.4% identify as Black or African American, 27.1% as Latinx, and 7.6% as Asian. And people come from a really wide range of backgrounds.
Remember that when you talk about commercial food service, you talk about such a wide group of people. You have the chef who's got $200,000 in student loans from the CIA, and you have someone who's an undocumented food service worker who is, making under minimum wage and working at a, local pizza place. We're trying to make sure that the services we provide in the application for assistance is applicable to each of those people. And we're really proud that over the last, 6 years, the story has evolved. Our ability to make people feel like they're a part of Giving Kitchen has changed dramatically. And so we are now, as of 2020, African American was the highest demographic served by Giving Kitchen. Caucasian next, and then Latin American after that, and then Asian American was just like a very small portion of who we serve. Our mantra is the right amount of money to the right people at the right time.
So how do they do this?
Really, anyone can start the process on our website or on our app.
First, they start with the basics.
Get an understanding of where you work, what's happened, how long have you been in crisis.
This information is reviewed by the Giving Kitchen team, and if they qualify...
Once you kind of make it past that first step, you are sent a full application.
The application includes a lot of financial information, like...
They'll upload a copy of their pay stub, just so we can have an understanding of where you are from a financial perspective. What are you paying in utilities? What are you paying in rent? What are you paying in a car? What are you paying in a cell phone?
So that they can assess the amount the worker would need per month. Plus, they ask for information documenting the crisis.
If you went to the doctor, it's a copy of the doctor's note, discharge paperwork. If you were in a car wreck, a copy of the accident report. If your house burned down, a copy of the firefighter's report. You upload, your statement of needs, so what's going on.
Based off of the information provided, Giving Kitchen will decide how much they need and for how long.
We look at how much time they miss from work. We look at how much they're paying in rent. We look at how much they're paying in utilities. And we'll say, okay, this person needs 4 months of assistance. This is going to cost X amount of dollars. And we'll get the checks out the door to them as quickly as possible. We cut checks twice a week, and we'll call them and let them know, hey, wanted to let you know Giving Kitchen is going to provide you support, and we've got essentially we're going to pay your living expenses until you're able to go back to work. And sometimes if the crisis looks like it's going to go a little longer or it's undetermined, we'll say, hey, we're going to provide 3 months of assistance. And after those 3 months, why don't you reach back out to us and we can discuss extending your grant or extending your financial award.
The checks that they cut are a little different than you might expect.
Because something that's different about Giving Kitchen, we actually don't provide financial assistance directly to the food service worker. We will give them checks that they can give to their landlord or checks they can give to their utility. And our goal is to essentially pay for living expenses until they're able to go back to work. We don't reimburse medical. That's a very complicated situation that's happening either between the insurance company or just you and the hospital. But our goal is until you're able to go back to work, we can make sure the roof's over your head and the lights are on and the water's running.
One of the most important steps of the process is the statement of need.
Because we will review 10 to 15 people a week who are getting financial assistance from Giving Kitchen. And I would say the most heartbreaking and the most real it gets is when we ask people to write out a statement of need. So usually it's a couple paragraphs of what's happening in their crisis, why they need help, and in their own words, reading their crisis. It's sometimes you have to get up and walk around the room because it's so intense. What's also interesting, and this happened a couple weeks ago, I was reading a statement of need from a chef. He works for IHOP as a line chef, and he has a son who was born premature, and he has another daughter at home. And, in his statement of need, it was very direct. My son was born premature. I've missed 2 weeks of work. He needs more surgery. I may miss more work. And that was it. But then in the doctor's notes, you really read a different story. And it was a story of a father who cared deeply for his son, who was there every night, who was there every morning, who was there with his wife. And it just kind of struck me, how direct he was. I ended up getting to meet him, and we hugged each other and cried. And you just think he was very matter of fact about the crisis. And then you read 3 or 4 doctor's notes, and you see that there's a different story of this really passionate father who's, they were in a tough spot. They were trying to figure out who's going to stay here and who's going to go back to work and pay the bills. So yeah, we got 10 to 15 of those stories a week.
In the restaurant industry, you get paid when you work, essentially. So most people in this industry don't really have adequate savings, and I'm definitely one of those people. I've fallen in that camp.
This is Jahan.
Okay, my name's Jahan Ostad. I'm 45 years old. I'll be 46 in April. I've been in this industry since August of 1993. So I've been doing this a long time.
Jahan mostly worked in front of house through his career, but he's also owned his own restaurant and worked as the chef owner. Over the last decade or so, he's been working mostly as a bartender. Right now, he's at a pizza place.
I'm going to go ahead and say it's the best pizza restaurant in the entire country.
The restaurant just happens to be a couple blocks from the Giving Kitchen offices, which is how he was connected with the program, which is lucky because in early 2019, he hurt himself.
So the founder is Jennifer. She came in with her husband to the restaurant a little bit over a year ago before I injured myself. And I was like, wow, I've heard about you guys. I just heard through the grapevine of the restaurant world. So I met her, and that was that pretty much. And then I wound up tearing my knee on March 2nd of last year, tearing my ACL. Not only do I work in the restaurant industry, but I'm also a live performer. I sing in a band. So I was doing a David Lee Roth spin kick off of a 30-inch drum riser. I missed my descent. I was wearing wrestling shoes, so I stuck the landing perfectly at the wrong angle, and severed my ACL. Yes, I finished the song. Yes, I finished the show. Being the professional that I am, I came back to work that week just hobbling, wearing a knee brace, not knowing how severely I injured it. I couldn't hear the pop that they always talk about when you blow your ACL because the drum kit was like right behind my head, smashing away. But I definitely felt something that was really, really bizarre. 2 weeks after the injury, I wound up getting an MRI that conclusively showed that I no longer had an ACL. And you can either go through life without one, it's not 100% necessary, or you can opt to have reconstructive surgery.
Which is what he decided to do. as a really active person who performs, hikes, runs, as well as works on his feet all day, Jahan opted to have the reconstructive surgery that would have him off his feet, unable to work for several months. It took several months before he was even able to get the surgery, so he kept himself active in the meantime.
So I actively got after it. I just started moving, walking, still at work. And I had to work because I didn't have money. So I had several months to plan for my situation that I was going to have. So that was kind of all in my financial scope of it, but that's not to say that I was, rich or anything by that time, because I definitely wasn't. So, yeah, they definitely help. If it wasn't for them helping me and Dr. Fogel helping me, I'd definitely be more in a hole than I already am.
About 16% of food service workers are living at or below the poverty line. The median person applying for assistance through Giving Kitchen is considered rent-burdened, which means that at least 42% of their paycheck is going to rent, not counting utilities or other bills. So this doesn't really leave a whole lot of room for anything else. Here's Brian again.
Once to twice a week, there is someone who has the eviction notice on their door. And we work those as quickly as possible because we understand that being evicted really, it becomes a potentially a lifetime problem. It's on your record for 7 years. It becomes very hard to rent another space. You lose everything. You get disrupted out of your school system. You get disrupted out of your social networks. That I think I would say that, Giving Kitchen presents as this, what a wonderful foodie people coming together. But at the end of the day, it's preventing homelessness and it's preventing eviction. But so if there's 1 to 2 people with evictions, there's 6 to 7 people who it's imminent and they're stressed out about it and they don't know how they're going to pay their bills.
A report done by the Giving Kitchen found that 81% of people who had been evicted had a hospitalization within a year previous to their eviction. Fortunately, the work Giving Kitchen is doing is helping to avoid these evictions, and they've asked their clients to rate how they've helped on a 5-point scale.
On a scale of 1 to 5, the question was, financial assistance from Giving Kitchen prevented me from incurring a late fee on 1 or more bills. So we saw a rating of 4.35, which is probably one of the best. And we also see Giving Kitchen prevented me from having at least one utility disconnected was at 3.89, with the most common answer being strongly agree. And even the lowest answer would, Giving Kitchen prevented me from becoming homeless. We're at 3.64. So these are all really good measures of what the work that Giving Kitchen is doing and what people are reporting after they've gotten help.
Having one eviction can have a serious effect on everything from job retention to mental health. Of applicants, 45% report feeling sad or depressed always or often, and nearly 51% report that they always or often cannot stop worrying. When it comes to taking care of mental health, food service workers already suffer at a higher rate than the national average, with 10% suffering from anxiety or depression compared to the national average of 6 to 7%. And those are just the people that have been diagnosed. In order to be diagnosed, you have to actually visit a doctor, which many food service workers don't do due to lack of access to insurance and paid time off. Add in the financial pressures of working in a low-wage job and an unplanned expensive crisis, the applicants at Giving Kitchen have a lot of anxious and depressive thoughts.
So from a perspective of depression, the question was in the last week, I felt sad or depressed. And at the time of applying for assistance, people were replying at the 3.56, which is, on a scale of 1 to 5, 3.56 said, I was feeling depressed before they started the application process. And then after receiving financial assistance, that score dropped to 2.54, which is a really great example of the impact that Giving Kitchen's having, not just on keeping people from being evicted or becoming homeless or experiencing homelessness. We'll also see that it's able to directly impact the depression that people feel of just not feeling like they're going to be able to make rent, or that no one cares about them, or no one is willing to step in and help out.
Giving Kitchen has had a lot of positive impact on the folks they've helped in Georgia. But as they've grown over the last few years, they had to think about the bigger picture and decide if and how they expand beyond their current community.
I'm almost 46 years old. I've been doing this my whole life.
Here's Jahan again.
I don't have medical insurance. The only times in my adult life when I have had medical insurance is when I had a more corporate restaurant job. So I actively make these decisions to clean myself up and better my health. I was always doing that. But then when you're even more in check, when you have an injury like this, you're like, okay, like now I'm 45, I have this, like I really need to take it to the next level.
So Jahan spent the months leading up to his surgery still working, exercising, eating healthier, and focusing on getting himself healthy. And then, when it came time for the surgery, something pretty remarkable happened.
I wound up just by August, I was arguably in the best shape of my entire life. I didn't have full flexibility or range of motion in my knee, of course, but just cardiovascularly and everything else, my health was on point. So finally, through the Giving Kitchen, I found an amazing doctor named Dr. Evander Fogel. He works with Resurgence Orthopedic out of St. Joseph's. They took some x-rays of me, and I came back in for my surgery. So they put me under with the anesthesia. I wake up in the middle of a conversation with nurses, completely out of it. And my mother walks in a few minutes later. She's like, "Did you hear the good news?" And I'm like, "What?" She's like, "You didn't need to have surgery." She's like, "You'd already regrown your ACL." I was like, "What?" My first reaction was, I was pissed at first. I was like, what am I doing here? Like, what the hell? I don't have money for this. Can't take this time off. Like I didn't have money for this surgery or any of this kind of stuff. I mean, I was mentally prepared to struggle, and I thought I was going to be off my feet for a couple of months. So instead, I was only off my feet for 1 month.
The doctor still did minor surgery to repair some of the frays and damage to the new ACL that had just grown in. But instead of being off his feet for a few months, Jahan only had to take a month off. This is where Giving Kitchen helped out.
The Giving Kitchen was wonderful. They paid 1 month of my rent. They paid 1 month of my utilities, being gas and electric bills, which was huge because I had to come out of pocket.
Without having insurance, the surgery would have been outrageously expensive. However, the other thing that Giving Kitchen was able to help Jahan with was finding a surgeon that would charge him less.
We also have dentists and doctors and surgeons who are providing services at a sliding scale that we're able to connect restaurant workers to.
They subsidized my surgery. Evander Fogel didn't just take my quote unquote case, but he subsidized and gave me the Medicare rate.
And this is the second program that Giving Kitchen has implemented in the last couple of years, the Stability Network.
In the very beginning, our only focus was financial awards, that we were going to provide money for people in crisis. And as word's gotten around about Giving Kitchen, there's a lot of people who call who are dealing with legitimate crises who don't qualify for help from us. Either they don't work in food service, or our rules and the people who we help, we've kind of defined crisis as something that's not chronic, that is causing financial strain. And it's really hard for our team to hear these awful stories and then either tell them no or tell them, well, you don't qualify for this, but we can help with that. And that's something that we've worked really hard to develop. It's not just the financial assistance, but also what we call our stability network, which is a connection to community resources. I think we all know food service is so insular. It is like a little intense family. And so people are, really don't know where to turn.
Because a lot of what food service workers experience is chronic and or systemic. Low wages, lack of access to healthcare, mental health issues, they're really important to address. So Giving Kitchen is starting to address them.
We led a town hall meeting up in North Georgia where you had chefs who had restaurants and owners who had restaurants for years, meeting social service agencies who had been operating in their community for years. No one knew that anyone existed. And so the Giving Kitchen really can play this important role as this connecting point between food service and the outside community.
Like connecting Jahan and others to healthcare providers that offer services at a discounted rate. One of the programs they've recently added on is what they're calling pop-up docs.
We're able to leverage the influence and the trust that Giving Kitchen has generated and garnered in our community to host these free health clinics, and restaurant workers will actually show up. Our goal is to have 300 restaurant workers at the next one. These are, real visits with a doctor. It's a full physician visit. On the open market, it would cost around $500 for someone who's uninsured to have this kind of visit. And then we also have, after your doctor visit or before your doctor visit, we have what you would consider like a health fair. So people from all different types of the backgrounds in the medical community and the healthcare community will kind of be at a different tables set up. And so we bring people in with the promise to see the doctor, and we have a good number of doctors who have committed to X number of visits. And then we also have this kind of health fair where you can pop around and go from Planned Parenthood to a guy who's offering discounts for dentist work for restaurant workers, to then a counseling service, then financial literacy. What we're trying to do is figure out, how those are a part of our future, and can we make these pop-up docs repeatable, replicable in communities across Georgia and in communities across the country.
This idea of repeatable and replicable is the next step in growing Giving Kitchen. The organization started in Atlanta and has since expanded to the rest of Georgia. But now they're trying to figure out if and how they can strategically grow even more to address some of the issues facing the industry nationwide.
I feel like Giving Kitchen has this opportunity to move into a kind of a nationally relevant influencer that not only can focus on the individual and have these specific programs for people who are in crisis, but what kind of resources can Giving Kitchen provide that are nationally relevant that any food service worker in the United States could take advantage of. One of the big ones was suicide prevention.
In 2019, Giving Kitchen was awarded a James Beard Leadership Award for the work that they were doing for folks in the industry. At the awards, they announced a new program they were implementing that would reach beyond Georgia and benefit the industry as a whole.
We had a couple of incidents where there were people who were discussing suicide in front of us, like in front of our teammates, and we didn't know what to do. And so we negotiated a deal with QPR Institute, which really invented this concept of question, persuade, and refer for how to help someone who's contemplating suicide. When Anthony Bourdain passed away that day, our phones rang off the hook. People just instinctively reached out to Giving Kitchen, and we used that training over and over for that whole week. We're on the front lines with how we've served the individuals in our community, and we're learning these lessons that we feel like are relevant and worth sharing with the community at large. And Giving Kitchen has a program where we will pay for any restaurant worker in the United States to take this online training class. How that happens and how that functions and how that's a part of Giving Kitchen moving forward, that's all up for debate. But it was a great opportunity to say to the food service industry, these are resources that we're going to provide.
There's a whole lot going on in the industry right now, and a lot of people are looking for ways to improve conditions for their workers. Giving Kitchen is in a position where they can make a widespread impact. But before they go full steam ahead, they need to figure out how they can do that.
There's been success, there's been failure, there's been some growing pains. There's something universal about food service. I think the community transcends boundaries in ways that I think Giving Kitchen is going to take advantage of as we expand across the country. But I do think the stories have to be rooted at home. People have to have eaten at the restaurant. One of the cities that is a large city for Georgia that we've expanded into is Columbus. It's about an hour and a half south of here. It's got its own community. It's got its own food scene. It's got its own big leaders in business have their home in Columbus, Georgia. And when we started, our strategy was we let everybody know who was in the food service community. We brought a lot of the restaurant owners in, a lot of the kind of influencers in the restaurant scene in Columbus, and we just kind of let them know about Giving Kitchen, and that was it. And so then, over the next few months, people started getting help, word started getting around, and then that summer we announced, kind of community-wide that Giving Kitchen was in town. What was great about that is instead of telling the story of Ryan and Jen Heidinger, who, that's a very Atlanta story, Atlanta community story. We're telling the stories of the people in Columbus who we had helped. I would say once a week, we're getting a call from someone somewhere else in the United States who wants Giving Kitchen in their hometown. And kind of what we've said, we have opened our playbook. So if anybody's building their own nonprofit or their own campaign, we've tried to share as much information as possible about what we've learned, how we work our system, the questions we ask, how we've tried to make this thing automated and scalable. And then if they said, no, we want you, then our answer to those folks is, well, we want to make sure the best version of Giving Kitchen steps out. So give us a little more time to figure out what that best version is, because it's got to be lean and mean. Otherwise, when we start trying to operate with building community on limited funds with people asking for help, we could crash and burn very quickly if we're not very, very careful about the best version of Giving Kitchen stepping out when we grow.
So Why food? What about the food industry makes it important for Giving Kitchen to focus on?
Yeah. Start with, it's so important to our community. From a jobs perspective alone, these are jobs you're not going to automate. These are jobs you're not going to export. These are jobs that anyone from doesn't matter your criminal background, your education level, if you can show up and work hard, there's a place for you in food service. What's the downside of this, right? If you're sick or you're hurt, there's not a place for you. It is a community that has a legacy of drug and alcohol abuse that needs to be addressed. And, what we see kind of between the good and the bad is this community that it creates. And that's where Giving Kitchen has just found a lot of green grass to run in. People see the value that it provides our economy. They see the value it provides our community. They also see how hard it is. They also see that there really isn't a place for you if you get sick or get hurt. And because it's so important to our community in Atlanta and across Georgia, people have responded to this idea that the right amount of money to the right people at the right time really resonates. We count on people who are in food service or out of food service to be our eyes and ears, to tell our story, that you can change someone's life by telling the story of Giving Kitchen. There's an app that you can download that we set up. It's a great way to get engaged with Giving Kitchen. There's opportunities to volunteer. There's opportunities to donate, but you can also open up a page and refer anyone to Giving Kitchen who needs help. That's free to download, and basically it's like having a tool for your toolkit. And if you're in Georgia and the next time you come across a food service worker who's in crisis, you can use the app to refer them, and someone from our team will get back to them within 24 to 48 hours.
I'm linking to the Giving Kitchen application as well as the suicide prevention training in the show notes. They put out a statement this week for any Georgia food service worker that has tested positive for coronavirus or has a note from a doctor for a mandatory quarantine to immediately reach out for financial assistance. Hopefully, this will help you or someone you work with, so please spread the word. Also, as promised at the top of the episode, I've put some other links to resources about coronavirus. These are pretty terrifying times, so I hope you are taking care of yourselves mentally and physically, as well as your communities. We're going to be wrapping up this season in the next episode and then taking a break before season 3. But we'll be releasing a few bonus episodes, so hit the subscribe button to stay up to date. If you could please leave us a review, that would be awesome. It helps us a ton. Also, we're thinking about season 3, so let us know if you have any ideas. What are you curious about? Overhead, the second season of Copper and Heat, is produced by me, Katie Osuna, and Ricardo Osuna. Our story editor is Rachel Palmer. Head on over to Twitter or Instagram and find us at Copper and Heat, or check out our website, copperandheat.com. All the music you hear is produced by us under the name Gamma Gardens. Check out other tracks on Instagram and SoundCloud. Thanks for listening.